We're told ancient people were primitive, but these artifacts suggest they had access to knowledge we still don't understand. For centuries, history has painted a very clear picture of the past, a slow climb, from stone tools to bronze to iron to the modern world we know today, a steady, predictable evolution of human intelligence. But what if that story isn't entirely true? What if, scattered across the world, buried beneath layers of dust, time, and silence, there are objects that don't fit into that timeline at all? Artifacts that seem out of place, too precise, too advanced, too impossible. These aren't myths or legends. They're real objects, discovered by archaeologists, studied by scientists, locked away in museums, and yet they raise questions no one has been able to fully answer. Because when you look closely at them, something feels off. The tools required to create them shouldn't have existed. The knowledge needed to design them shouldn't have been known. And the civilizations credited with making them weren't supposed to be capable of anything like this. So either history is missing something, or we've misunderstood our past entirely. And that's where things start to get uncomfortable. Because if even one of these artifacts challenges the timeline we trust, then everything we think we know about human development could be incomplete. In this video, we're going to explore 8 of the most mysterious ancient artifacts ever discovered, objects that seem far too advanced for their time. Each one comes with an official explanation, a logical, scientific attempt to place it safely within our understanding of history. But in every case, that explanation leaves something behind, a gap, a question, a detail that doesn't quite fit. And it's inside those gaps that the real mystery begins. Because some researchers believe these artifacts may point to lost knowledge, forgotten technologies, or even civilizations far more advanced than we've been taught. Others remain skeptical, arguing that we simply don't yet understand the full capabilities of ancient people. But here's the truth. No matter which side you're on, once you see these objects for yourself, it becomes very difficult to ignore the questions they raise. So let's start with something small, something almost easy to overlook. At first glance, it doesn't look like much. No glowing lights, no moving parts, just a simple object, worn by time. But hidden within it is a level of precision that shouldn't exist in the ancient world. A design so exact that even modern engineers have struggled to fully explain how it was made. And this is where things begin to shift. Because the deeper we look, the harder it becomes to believe that ancient civilizations were as limited as we once thought. And if that's true, then this isn't just a story about strange artifacts. It's a story about a past that may have been far more advanced and far more mysterious than anyone is ready to admit. Let's begin. The first artifact almost looks like a mistake, something that slipped through history unnoticed until someone took a closer look. It's called the Antikythera Mechanism. Discovered in 1901 inside a shipwreck off the coast of Greece, this corroded lump of bronze didn't seem extraordinary at first, just another relic from the ancient world. But then they opened it. Inside were gears, dozens of them, interlocking, intricate, unbelievably precise. And this is where things don't add up. Because this device dates back over 2,000 years, a time when, according to conventional history, machinery like this simply didn't exist. Yet when researchers studied it further, they realized something astonishing. This wasn't just a random collection of gears. It was a machine, a complex analog computer capable of predicting astronomical events, solar eclipses, lunar cycles, even the movements of planets. The level of engineering required to build something like this is staggering. Even in the modern era, recreating it has proven difficult. So how did an ancient civilization, without modern tools, create something so advanced? The official explanation suggests that Greek scientists, possibly influenced by thinkers like Archimedes, developed this technology ahead of their time, and that the knowledge was later lost. And that could be true. But here's what makes researchers uncomfortable. There's no clear record of the technological steps that led to it. No prototypes, no earlier versions, no gradual evolution. It just appears, fully formed, which raises a disturbing question. Was this a one-time invention, or just the only one that survived? Because if devices like this were more common than we think, then ancient technology may have been far more advanced than history tells us. And that's only the beginning, because the next artifact doesn't just suggest advanced engineering, it suggests precision that borders on impossible. Hidden deep inside an ancient Egyptian tomb, archaeologists discovered something small, almost decorative. At first glance, it looked like a simple stone jar, but when examined under modern instruments, everything changed. This is the Saqqara Vase, carved from hard stone, granite, diorite, materials that are extremely difficult to shape even with today's tools. And yet, its walls are perfectly symmetrical, so thin, so evenly balanced that even the slightest deviation would have shattered the entire piece during its creation. But here's where it gets strange. The interior curves extend into areas that would be nearly impossible to reach with primitive tools. No visible tool marks, no clear method of construction, just perfection. The official explanation is that ancient Egyptian craftsmen used simple tools over long periods of time, slowly grinding and shaping the stone with incredible patience and skill. And yes, the Egyptians were master craftsmen, but this level of precision raises serious questions, because modern engineers who've studied similar objects have pointed out something unsettling. Even with advanced machinery, reproducing this exact design is incredibly challenging. So how did they do it? Some believe it's simply a lost art, a technique that hasn't survived. Others suggest something more controversial, that ancient builders may have had access to tools or knowledge we don't fully understand. And if that's even partially true, then what else have we misunderstood about ancient Egypt? But just when you think these mysteries couldn't get any stranger, the third artifact takes us somewhere completely different. Not to a grand civilization, but to something buried, deep within stone. In 1961, inside a rock formation in California, a group of collectors made a discovery that would spark decades of debate. Encased within hardened clay and fossilized material was what appeared to be a modern object. At its core, a spark plug. This object became known as the Koso artifact, and this is where things become truly difficult to explain, because geological analysis suggested that the surrounding material could be hundreds of thousands of years old, long before humans had any technology remotely resembling a spark plug. The official explanation, most scientists argue that the dating is misleading, that the object is likely a 20th century spark plug that became encased in a natural concretion over time, a rare but not impossible process. But here's the problem. The internal structure of the object, the way it's preserved, doesn't completely match typical examples of that kind of formation, and that's where the debate begins. Because if the conventional explanation is correct, then this is simply a strange coincidence of geology. But if it's not, then we're left with something far more unsettling, an object that appears modern, trapped in something that should be ancient. And this is the moment where the pattern starts to emerge. 3 artifacts, 3 different places in the world, 3 separate timelines, yet all pointing to the same uncomfortable possibility. that maybe, just maybe, our understanding of the past. By now, a pattern is starting to form. Not a clear answer, but something far more unsettling. Because each of these discoveries doesn't just challenge history, it quietly suggests that something may be missing from it. And the deeper we go, the harder it becomes to explain things away. The fourth artifact doesn't look advanced at all. In fact, it looks almost crude. A small clay object shaped like a simple container. It was discovered near Baghdad in the 1930s. Nothing about it seemed extraordinary until researchers examined what was inside. A copper cylinder, an iron rod, and traces of an acidic substance. Together, these components form something very familiar, a basic battery. Now known as the Baghdad battery, this artifact dates back over 2,000 years. And this is where things get strange. Because when modern scientists recreated it using similar materials, it actually produced a small electrical charge. Not powerful by today's standards, but undeniable. So the question is obvious. Did ancient people understand electricity? The official explanation is cautious. Some researchers believe it may have been used for simple electroplating, perhaps to coat objects in gold or silver. Others argue it may have had no electrical purpose at all, just a storage vessel misinterpreted by modern eyes. And that could be true. But here's what makes this uncomfortable. There are no clear records, no tools, no widespread evidence of electrical use from that time. Just this object, sitting quietly, out of place. Because if it really was a battery, then it wasn't an accident. Which means someone, somewhere, understood the concept of electricity long before we thought possible. And if that's the case, what else did they know? But the next discovery doesn't just hint at knowledge, it suggests precision engineering on a level that feels almost impossible. Hidden beneath layers of dust in ancient Peru, archaeologists uncovered something that shouldn't exist in stone. Perfectly cut blocks, massive in size, fitted together so tightly that not even a razor blade can slide between them. This is the stonework of sites like Sacsayhuaman, and this is where things don't add up. These stones are not only enormous, some weighing over 100 tons, they're shaped with incredible complexity. Angles, curves, interlocking edges, each piece perfectly matched to the next, like a three-dimensional puzzle carved with absolute precision. But here's the problem. According to mainstream history, these structures were built without iron tools, without modern machinery, without even the wheel. So how do you shape stone this precisely, at that scale, without advanced technology? The official explanation credits human ingenuity, skilled workers using hammerstones, patience, and time, a lot of time. And yes, ancient builders were capable of incredible feats. But this level of precision repeated over entire structures feels different. Even modern engineers have admitted that replicating this kind of stone fitting, especially at that size, is extremely difficult. And this is what makes researchers uneasy, because the method isn't fully understood, not completely. Some theories suggest lost techniques, perhaps ways of softening stone or using unknown tools. Others go further, proposing that ancient civilizations may have had technologies that simply didn't survive. And if that's even remotely true, then sites like this aren't just architectural wonders, they're evidence of something we've forgotten. But just when you think the mystery has reached its limit, the sixth artifact takes us into something even more unsettling, because this one looks like it shouldn't exist at all. In the late 19th century, a series of small clay figurines were discovered in Colombia and Central America. At first, they were dismissed as simple art, stylized representations of animals or mythological creatures. But then someone looked closer, really closely, because some of these figurines have features that are disturbingly familiar. Delta-shaped wings, vertical stabilizers, streamlined bodies. They look like modern aircraft. These are often referred to as the Kimbaya artifacts, and this is where things become deeply uncomfortable. Because when engineers analyzed their shape, they noticed something shocking. The proportions, the aerodynamics, they actually...
By now, the pattern is impossible to ignore. Different continents, different civilizations, different time periods. And yet, the same quiet contradiction keeps appearing. Artifacts that feel out of place. Not just advanced, but misplaced in time. And the seventh discovery might be one of the clearest examples of that. Because this time, the mystery isn't hidden in complexity. It's hidden in familiarity. In the 16th century, deep inside the tomb of a Chinese noble from the Ming Dynasty, archaeologists made a discovery that should have been impossible. A small metallic object, partially buried in the soil. At first, it didn't seem important, but when it was cleaned, everything changed. It looked exactly like a ring. A tiny ring, shaped like a watch, complete with a miniature clock face. Frozen in time, its hands pointing to a specific hour. This object became known as the Ming Dynasty ring. And this is where things become difficult to explain. Because mechanical watches, especially ones this small, weren't supposed to exist in that region during that period. The official explanation is grounded and cautious. Some researchers believe the tomb may have been disturbed at some point, allowing a modern object to fall inside. Others suggest it could be a later contamination during excavation. And that's possible. But here's what makes people pause. The tomb was believed to be sealed for centuries, undisturbed, untouched. So how does a seemingly modern object end up inside without any clear evidence of intrusion? And this is what makes researchers uncomfortable. Because even if there is a logical explanation, it hasn't been definitively proven, which leaves just enough uncertainty for doubt to grow. But the final artifact takes that doubt and turns it into something much harder to ignore. Because this one doesn't just challenge history, it challenges our entire understanding of human capability. Scattered across ancient sites in Egypt, particularly around the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, there are carvings that have sparked decades of debate. At first glance, they look symbolic, decorative, like countless other carvings from the ancient world. But then you look closer, and suddenly they don't. Because what these carvings appear to show is something strikingly familiar. Large, elongated shapes resembling glass bulbs. Inside them, serpent-like forms stretching from one end to the other, connected to what looks like a base, almost like a socket. And alongside them, figures holding objects that resemble cables or rods. These are often referred to as the Dendera light reliefs. And this is where everything starts to feel unsettling. Because to modernize, the resemblance is hard to ignore. They look like primitive light bulbs, which raises a question that shouldn't even exist. Were the ancient Egyptians depicting some form of electrical device? The official explanation strongly disagrees. Egyptologists argue that these are purely symbolic representations, mythological scenes involving a serpent emerging from a lotus flower, tied to spiritual beliefs and creation stories. And that interpretation is supported by broader Egyptian mythology. But here's where things don't fully settle. Because the visual similarity is striking, uncomfortably striking. And this is what creates tension. Not proof, but possibility. Because if these carvings are purely symbolic, then why do they resemble something so technologically specific? And if they're not, then we're faced with a far more disturbing idea. That ancient civilizations may have understood concepts we believe only emerged thousands of years later. Now, to be clear, There is no confirmed evidence that the Egyptians had electric lighting, no wires, no generators, no infrastructure. But the question doesn't disappear. It lingers. Because throughout this journey, we've seen the same pattern again and again. Objects that appear too advanced, too precise, too unexpected. Each one explained, but never completely. Each one leaving behind just enough uncertainty to make you wonder. Because if even a fraction of these mysteries point to lost knowledge, then history isn't just incomplete, it's missing entire chapters. Chapters that could change how we see human civilization forever. And maybe that's the most unsettling part of all. Not that these artifacts exist, but that we still don't fully understand them. And perhaps we're not supposed to. Because if we ever do, we might discover that the ancient world wasn't behind us at all, but far more advanced than we ever imagined.